Welcome back to Nature Inspired. Today we are again standing in plot 4, and we thank you for continuing to join us on this journey as we learn what we can from you and we impart whatever we learn to you based on our experience, of course. Reminding you that this is a learning channel and learning for us goes both ways. So we'll tell you what we know, what we discovered, and you can also share some of your knowledge with us as well. We're standing in plot 4, and as you know, we have been clearing this plot for cultivation. We have started with some herbicides to clear some of the extremely tall grass, and we must say we have seen significant improvement in terms of the grass getting less. These sections we have cleared manually after burning, so we've cleared the remaining grass that were on the furrows, and so we'll have to do that for the entire section. But the herbicide really did make a big difference, as the volume of grass is much less now as we speak. But in other news, we know that we are now watching closely for the hurricane, as we're in the hurricane season, and as farmers we have to ourselves take some precautions based on what we're doing, based on where we're at. We have to take some precautions to ensure that we are not, well, we don't lose too much in the face of a disaster or a hazard. Atlantic hurricane season, it starts June 1 and ends November 30th each year. So that is when we are typically affected by hurricanes. With climate change happening, we have some changes in situations where we can get more intense hurricanes and maybe even an increase in the number that we can get through the season. Now for 2024, it has been forecast that we will have a above average hurricane season, and that is from the Meteorological Service. So for a little context, I have a degree in meteorology, and I would have worked with the Meteorological Service for a short while, about 2 years, and Sheldon worked with the Meteorological Service for over 10 years. So I also have a master's degree in climate change, natural resource environmental management. So we have a little knowledge in the area, and so as we prepare from our end as farmers, we would want to share some of the tips with you as well, and some of the things that we plan to do or that we would have done leading up to now. So firstly, you have to keep, as farmers, you have to keep abreast of what's happening. So you listen to what the Meteorological Service has to say. You listen to the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. Sheldon also has some experience in that area as well. He would have worked with the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management for over 4 years. So he also has some knowledge in the field of the area of preparedness. The Meteorological Service and the ODPEM will release frequent updates on the pending hurricane. And so just keep abreast of that. Keep in the know. For hurricanes, the major things that we're concerned with are wind damage and also excess rainfall, which leads to flooding. So keep abreast of that so you can monitor your farm and your situation. You would know how your farm is situated and what would be likely to impact it most. So that's one. Two, we would also recommend that if you have things in the field that can be reaped, you aim to get them reaped and sold, or if you have the storage capacity, you reap them and store them so that you can sell them at a later date or a later time. Reason being, with the wind and the floods, you can lose your crops, again based on how your crops are situated. And if you can limit the damage, limit the loss for yourself by reaping what you can, then do that. Again, the path can change depending on atmospheric conditions, or the intensity can also change, but in preparedness we have to be ready in case the worst happens. So if you have crops that you can reap, go ahead and reap them and sell them, or store them so that you can sell them at a later time. Also, you need to assess your farm, your plots, how they're situated, see if, or based on history, if flooding would normally be a problem, and then identify ways that you can maybe cut a trench or something that would clear debris that would be blocking areas, so that the flow, you can direct the flow of the water. Now, if there's excess water flow, it can take a lot of the soil on the topsoil, and then it can also cause debris pile up. So you ensure that as best as possible you clear some areas so that there's free flow of water through the plot, and it isn't being blocked up in the plot. Or we have, for example, a plot that holds a lot of water, and because it's very flat, water settles. So for that section, it will be good if we cut a trench so that once the water comes, it can flow out rather quickly than stay in the plot. We should also be prepared for what happens after the hurricane. So after severe rainfall or extended period of rainfall, we know that, for example, for peppers, for us, we know they are highly susceptible to fungus. And so once we have prolonged rainfall, we have to anticipate that we'll have to have a spray cycle immediately when the rain stops. So we need to have the appropriate fungicide ready, so that as soon as the rain ends, we'll be able to spray this. So for you can assess what is your crop, and how will you treat it after the rains end. Also ensure that your spraying regime includes fruit trees in and around your crop as well. As we farm, we have to be prepared not just for this coming hurricane, but for other future hazards. Not just even hurricanes, but excess rainfall, and we know that we have a lot of extreme rainfall events in May, June for us here in Jamaica. So not just for this hurricane, but we ensure that we cultivate in such a way that we are preparing ourselves, preparing our crops in the event that there's a natural hazard that affects us. So even in the way how we cultivate our crops, in the way that we cut the furrows, ensure that it is done in such a way that it reduces water flow through your field. So even for persons who farm on hillsides, using the contouring method to farm along the contour of the hill instead of down the hill. So you cut the furrows across the hillside, and that will reduce the speed at which the water comes down the hillside, because it will have little barriers coming down. That will assist with slowing down the speed of the water, which can cause erosion of your topsoil, which has a lot of the nutrients that your crops need. So if we plan in advance and we set these things in place, it will reduce the negative impacts that we will have from these severe events, rainfall events, for example. Also, cutting your furrows in such a way that they allow wind to pass through, and that should reduce the wind damage on the crops. So instead of trying to get through a crowded area, the wind would have specific parts, or it would have clear parts between the rows, and so it would reduce the falling of your trees and things such as that. It's also good to note that barrier crops can be useful once they are strategically placed. So you can have them along the edge of the crop, not in places where if they fall, they will fall on your crop as well. So you don't want them to be too close to the plot so that if they fall, they cause damage, but they can assist to break the wind. So when the wind is coming in, the taller trees will break the wind. So they act as windbreaks, and so the your crops could be protected or shielded from some of that strong wind. So one thing that we would also recommend is that you explore insurance options that are best for your crop, best for you and affordable for you. We would have insured our crops for, yeah, so they are insured, and it's a recurring cost. So you have to assess for you what's something that's workable. I know there are a number of entities now that are offering insurance options, so you can look at what insurance option is best for you and you put that in place. It is something good to have when you think about if you should need to rebuild. So if you need to rebuild, it will at least be a start in assisting you with rebuilding your farm after a disaster has occurred. So we don't have any animals, but for persons who do livestock, again, assess your farm and identify areas that you think would be safer for your animals, areas that they'll be safe from anything falling or flying objects or falling trees, falling objects, anything like that. And even to higher ground where they won't be exposed to flood waters or any sort of flooding. So, and areas that you will also be able to access them. You ensure that you store feed and medication if necessary, and if possible you could even take them indoors. But again, it depends on your situation, your circumstances, or even keep them close to you so that you'll be able to monitor them in the event that we have a natural disaster.
Before and after a disaster, or even during, just keep abreast with the information that is being shared by the local meteorological services. For Jamaica, it's the Meteorological Service of Jamaica, and our disaster office, which is the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. They would have the different bulletins, different information products that they would share on the current situation and what to expect. You can also follow their social media pages just to ensure that you have adequate information, and also have a plan. Know the evacuation route if you're living in a flood prone area. Stock up on supplies, your batteries, your lights. Have enough food, non-perishable items as best as possible that can last a good time, and keep contact information for the nearest police station, the hospital, your closest friends and families. So yeah, have a plan and be prepared.
So as we prepare for this hurricane, thank you for joining us. Continue to like, continue to share, continue to subscribe, and if you have any questions, any areas that we wouldn't have covered in any of our other videos that you want us to touch on or to do a video on, feel free to share that with us, and we will do our best to respond to that with a video. Again, we look forward to your comments. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.